You're listening to the Lung Lab podcast made possible by the Open Source Imaging Consortium. Here's your host, Elizabeth Estes.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 1 of the Lung Lab, brought to you by OSIC, the Open Source Imaging Consortium. So for those of you who don't know, OSIC is a collaborative that started about 8 years ago. I've been involved from the very beginning, and it was created by, and actually I tell this story, it's a heartwarming story about a pulmonologist, a radiologist, and an industry executive walking into a bar. And that's actually true. That's the heartwarming story. Actually, they say now it was breakfast. I think they're revising history, but it's irrelevant. But they went in and said, what if we could? Right? What if we could create this collaboration between fierce competitors in the space, between artificial intelligence geniuses and pulmonologists and radiologists, and what if we could get and amass the largest global database in the world? So what if we could build a machine learning algorithm, because we know that machines are really good at patterns, right? So imagine, why does Google know a cat from a dog? It knows a cat from a dog because somebody put a lot of cat pictures in and labeled it cat. Ears, tail, whiskers. This is a dog, right? So the concept works for any kind of pattern you're trying to find. And so in this case, could we find real world data from all over the world, real world images of diseased lungs, put them in a database, label them, and say, this is pulmonary fibrosis, this is bronchiectasis, this is sarcoidosis. And could we then teach the machines to try to find these sooner? Because a lot of these diseases suffer from what we call a diagnosis by elimination. With idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, it takes 26 months to be diagnosed. So these patients not feeling well, short of breath, they go to the doctor, they're given antibiotics, they're given steroids, and patients who are listening right now are shaking their heads. This is what happened to me, right? And they go through and they go through and they go to another doctor, and finally 2 years later, someone says, let's have a high-res CT scan, because that's technically the only way some of these diseases can be diagnosed. And so what we believe is that we're able to teach a machine to try to see these sooner than the human eye could possibly, or would even know what it is. My role is the executive director of OSIC. I started and I come from the outside. I'm not from the medical research world, which was a pretty risky thing for the powers that be at the time to say, hey, could you run this? But I think they knew that I wasn't going to be limited by what I knew because I didn't know that much. And so my job in the beginning was to try to find people who would collaborate together to try to help solve and again, make radical progress for the people living with this horrible disease. And so my role was to come together and say, could we build the world's largest database in fibrosing lung diseases with data from all over the world? And could we make it meaningful so that we could make radical progress? My role now is just leading and shepherding the project. I said 8 years ago I would do it on an interim basis, and I'm still here doing it. And we've gone through a lot. You never really want to start a global lung consortium during the middle of a global lung pandemic, but we didn't have a lot of choice. So we lived through all of that. 8 years later, we're still here. And we now are at a really interesting inflection point in OSIC that we are now moving past the point of building the database. We've built it. It's the world's largest and most diverse. We have companies who have worked with us who now have FDA-approved algorithms to try to help diagnose this disease sooner. We've made a lot of progress, but now it's the next step that we're taking, which is how do we make it even more valuable so that we can get to the point of understanding these diseases sooner for these patients. So this season, we were blessed to be able to go to the European Respiratory Society meeting in Amsterdam. And this season will be the interviews from that meeting. We try to do things efficiently and economically. When we have a whole bunch of experts in the disease in one space, we're going to talk to them all. And so we're going to hear a little bit about, from a physician, on the patient burden, what the patients and their caregivers and their families go through with disease. We're going to hear from some machine learning experts and where we think this could go and what could the progress look like over the next year, 2 years, 3 years in rare and fibrosing lung diseases. We're going to talk with people who are experts in the data space and radiologists who are dealing at a higher level with looking at these scans. It is a very difficult disease to see with the human eye. And so you might think radiologists are not happy about what we're doing with OSIC, but they're thrilled because they know that we have the ability to use a machine that an eye that would never tire, never make a mistake, and always get the diagnosis right. And that's what we're going to talk to quite a few people, quite a few experts in the space about the disease and about the advances that are happening right now in the space and about where we need to go to get there quicker. So if that's something that sounds interesting to you, not only for this rare lung disease, but other rare lung diseases, because we believe at OSIC that what we've learned and what we've been able to learn over the last 8 years can be applied to other rare lung diseases, sarcoidosis, alpha-1, many bronchiectasis, many LAM, a disease that affects women. So we're going to talk about all of these things on the Lung Labs. If you know someone who's suffering from a disease, or you yourself, or you're a caregiver for someone and you want to learn more, please subscribe and stay tuned for episode 2.
The Lung Lab podcast is produced by Bloodstream Media. Learn more at www.bloodstreammedia.com.